I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have another amazing guest. I had the privilege of seeing his incredible Macavity when I traveled to Frankfurt for the international tour, and I'm so excited to have him here today because this is all fresh in his mind. He is still on this tour, so welcome, Marco Venturini, and thank you for joining me.
I am very happy to be present, Mike.
I had a blast in Frankfurt, so I'm slowly. I've loved working through your cast slowly and hearing all the different perspectives. And you also got to start in the China section of this tour, so I've loved hearing the differences between those two. So we will get to all of that, but I always start at the beginning, which is your cat's history. So when was your first introduction to this musical?
Well, mine is a little bit unique, actually. There's this recording. No, I'm joking. It's the same as everyone else. It's absolutely, there's nothing unique about it. The only thing that's unique about it, I would say, so when I was 15, I started dabbling with ballet. And one of my dance teachers just gave me it was a DVD, to be fair, of the, iconic recording. And I took it home. I just put it on and was obsessed with the soundtrack. And then I'm Italian. I grew up in Italy. And so I was sort of trying to make sense of a lot of it was difficult with the language barrier and just trying to make sense of the text. And I just remember trying to Google for hours on end what the word jellicle meant without finding an explanation anywhere. And I just remember it would drive me nuts because I was like, what the heck does jellicle mean?
What's your answer now?
Well, now I have an answer, it's like a sort of collective chosen name for a family. But at the time I was like, I just wanted to know what it meant. And again, like as much as I watched it on repeat, the meaning of it is so difficult. It's so beyond your grasp until you're in it.
Yeah.
That
totally.
I was much more focused on like the more face value of it rather than the deeper parts of it.
As a dancer, I'm also sure it's a little bit of like you're watching the movement and all this stuff, and I think that's part of why, like, even for me, this show exists is I'm not a dancer, I'm not a singer. So I was watching story and only story. I was like, oh yeah, this is great dancing, but I don't know I know mentally how difficult this looks, but I've never done it. I've never tried to do it. So I was purely trying to pick apart the plot. And that's why we're here today.
Well, that's why we're here today. But I guess for me, it was sort of the opposite. I guess my dance teacher gave it to me as like a reference to like, what a really advanced, highly skilled presentation of like realized dance in musical theater looks like. And so to me, especially because, in Italy, there isn't really a musical theater scene whatsoever. To me, it felt like something that was almost like a parallel universe, was so far beyond my reach. And I just remember having the thought watching it of like, this is the highest achievement one could ever hope to reach if they were, to pursue a career in this. So it was cool, like, 15 years later to have this sort of full circle moment.
It's interesting to hear you say that because, again, I didn't grow up doing that. And so like I grew up playing sports. So the pinnacle is, the professional league, like the peak league. And in musical theater, there's so many shows and there's so many classical, like historic shows. And I've heard so many times that like as a dancer, especially, that Cats is the like peak show. And it's so fun to me because it's such a weird show. Like it's such an odd, strange thing, but it has become like, that's the one everyone wants to do if you're a dancer or just in general for your career.
Absolutely. I would say if you're a dancer, it's unlikely. I mean, obviously it might be slightly changing with like newer generations, I guess, but especially in terms of like those of us who craved that classic musical theater dance training, there is no show where you'll be doing any more dancing than that. So, it's really, the most intense thing you'll ever do in musical theatre.
What did you figure out when you first saw it? You know, you said you were searching just for a Jellicle Cat, but were you searching for the rest of the story? Like how much were you digging into?
Not really. No, I watched it on repeat and I listened to the songs on repeat. And, you know, for me, again, I developed a sort of like independent passion. I had interests that were very sort of like isolating in a way, musical theatre, which again doesn't exist in Italy. So I didn't really have anyone to share this with other than myself. And then for some reason, I was obsessed with English, and I sort of taught myself a lot of English through watching things, listening to music, watching television shows, films in English. And so to me, there was an element of just learning the language that wasn't necessarily tied to the meaning of what they were saying, more so to just like, oh, this word means this thing, and like rhymes and the magic of that. Which is why it was so frustrating to not find a translation for Jellicle, because obviously, you know, if you're translating pheasant and grouse, I'm like, okay, I know what that means. But so many other things. Or even I remember trying to translate the word Gumby, you know, a Gumby cat. And I was like, what is a Gumby? What's a Gumby? You know.
I'm thinking about that now. Of like, there's so much, the names are just wild.
Of course.
Like, what's Skimbleshanks? Like, do people actually name these, or?
It's also it's definitely different. Certain names sound like words that you would recognize. Like a Deuteronomy sounds like a concept of something, but it's not. You know, so there's even that layer of like certain words you almost recognize, and you're like, I feel like I should know what this means. Even like Mistopheles, obviously, is a reference to certain. You know, there's names that are tied to like mystical things in there. You can't quite place it. It's like remembering something that you don't quite know what it is, which is interesting.
What was the most educational song from an English perspective? Like, what did you learn the most from?
Well, I focused. I remember being like hyper focused on the first act, and then in the second act, I would almost always just kind of go from Macavity onwards. Which, you know, is ironic, but I wasn't really. So I just remember Rum Tum Tugger, Mungo Jerry and Rumpelteazer were the ones that I would really, because there's just so much like clever wordplay and the rhymes and everything are so interesting. And then Macavity to an extent, but Rum Tum Tugger was my like number one sort of on repeat thing. Okay. It's such a clever song, you know, the writing is just brilliant. I mean, I don't know if anything else in the show captures the essence of a real cat more than that song.
That is true. That is true.
It's perfect.
There's two songs that are very distinctly or have distinctly British parts that I, as you know, someone who speaks, you know, American English with like there's terminology I was like, I don't even know what that is, or I can figure it out through context clues. But in Gumby Cat and Jenny Dot's tatting, was not sure what that was at first.
Sure.
You know, I was like, I assumed it was crochet. I thought it was tattooing, and I was like, that's way funnier.
Well, Beatles tattoo,
yeah. And then the other one for me was Bus for Jones, because the word gentleman's club is a different meaning in the United States. And so that was kind of a fun one to play with, because it's a place where people take off their clothes is a gentleman's club in the United States.
And there you go, which I don't believe is the intention of the song.
I don't think that was the intent, but it definitely made Bus for Jones quite funnier.
Very interesting.
If you think about it from that perspective.
Well, this was the other thing that I couldn't reconcile, was there are so many references to actually like a lot of real life places and things. Which again, to me, because they were set in such a fantastical, scenery, was completely lost on me. You know, like there's all these pubs, and like during Gus's song, there's, you know, a myriad different references to actors and things, which again completely went over my head. I mean, let's be honest, I wasn't exactly jamming out to Gus the Theatre Cat. That is one of the songs that I would skip. Sorry, Gus.
No. I mean, it's a well done song, but it's not a bop that you're gonna go like.
Again, I mean, I feel like out of all of the songs, that one like really speaks to a specific type of audience, and it's harder to sort of like relate it to a broader. There's less to sort of hold on to in terms of like the music and the orchestration and the dancing. It's a very, It's beautiful,
But that's
obviously.
that's why the show works so well. Something relates to somebody. You know, like I've had people go in depth about how much they love that song, and you're telling me how much you love Tugger, and I constantly am singing Skimbleshanks right now. So it's like there's a little bit for everybody, which is so fun to me, and that's I think why it's so successful.
For sure. I mean, again, I could go on forever, but I think one of the things that makes the show so brilliant and the reason why it's been such a global success is I don't know that you could create something that strikes a better balance between artistic expression and commercial viability. You know, in terms of like, the story is so amorphous and sort of up for interpretation that it truly is for absolutely anyone. But at the same time, through production, choreography, like just the more logistical aspects of it, you are presenting an incredible piece of theater, regardless of whether you get it or not. So
all ages can come. It doesn't matter if you speak the language.
Not at all.
One thing that at least the program that I bought in Germany, there was a really cool page in there. I should take a picture of it and share it at some point. But it shows where Cats has been done in the world. It's like a global map.
Yeah.
It's got like little stars everywhere. And I was sitting there. I knew about a lot of them. You know, over the years, I've like met people who have done them, or I've been slowly trying to get people who did different productions to hear all the different versions. And I was like on that page going, wait, I didn't know about this one. When did this one happen? Where did you stop here? And it works because you don't need to speak English to still enjoy it.
Not at all. I mean, again, for me, it's quite special. It's so like strange. I moved to the UK 10 years ago this year to go to university and then work there and everything. So my family hasn't had a lot of chances to see me perform. I mean, my parents are superheroes. They try to always come out to things. They made it all the way to China to see the show.
Wow.
But very often, shows I've done, obviously, they are extremely left out because they don't speak English. So, they'll come and support. But, it's other musicals where there's a lot more components of story and plot and whatever, even jokes. Like, that's one of the things that they always feel like left out when everyone else around you is laughing and you don't know why. So it, in a way, is so special to me that they can enjoy something like this to a degree where I'm like, you actually don't, it really doesn't matter if you understand the words, because I promise you most of the people don't.
Yeah, they don't know.
It really doesn't matter.
I was
you can enjoy it for a different reason.
I was praying you guys were going to do it in German when I was there.
Really?
Just because I really want to see it in another language, because I have cast albums from either official, like actual albums, or some, I don't know where they were acquired bootlegs that I have been sent to me. In multiple different languages. And it's so fun to listen to it because it's all the same, but it's different.
Of course. I mean, I think certain translations are probably more successful than others. I have attempted to like do a little bit of I just have like a personal interest in translation, and I've tried to rewrite some of the songs. It is so difficult in Italian. There are too many syllables in our dictionary. It just doesn't work. So it's tough. But I actually remember I auditioned for the Vienna one that was years ago, and they had me sing some of it in German. And I remember thinking, this is so strange.
It's different.
For the melody to be exactly the same and then the words be so, to me, outlandish. It was like, oh.
Yeah, I've definitely heard some of the German. There's Japan has they have incredible performances and they're well recorded, so you can get that copy. I interviewed someone who did it in Mexico. And so hearing it in Spanish was kind of fun. Spanish
is easier for translation because again it's sort of like shortened words. Well, in China we sang Little Memory, and after Moments of Happiness we would sing it in Mandarin, which was very exciting. And it was funny sort of coming out of it because that moment would always get a massive applause from the audience. They were just so ecstatic that we would sing in Chinese. And then when we went back to the normal version in Germany, going back to that moment and having no applause felt so strange. It was like, isn't that supposed to be a massive reaction to this moment? Oh, wait. No,
you need to do it in German there.
I don't think it would elicit the same response. I don't think people would lose their minds and be like, okay, they can sing a little bit of German. Whereas, Mandarin is like, whoa, this company took the time to try and learn it. Obviously, like, butchered it, but,
Yeah, I mean,
what can you do?
You at least did something to. I mean, that's a cool experience because that it does. I mean, it's so well received there. Like it's massive fan base there.
It's astonishing. I mean, the people you meet at stage door have like, they will tell you fan theories and things that they think and give you gifts, and it just means the world. It's so special. Yeah, it's really nice.
So let's move to that, because that's when 2024, that's when you joined. That's the first time you've ever done Cats, right? This was the introduction. And you're signed on as Macavity.
Yeah.
And so this is, now you have your, this dream that you've learned and was the pinnacle, and you've reached it. So what was the beginning like? What was the first couple rehearsals and learning the story? Did you flat out ask what's a Jellicle Cat and to get that answer then?
No, I sort of sat back and took it all in. I really can't put into words how, because again, like, I don't want to, reiterate the fact, but I because my path is slightly different to a lot of the people that end up working in musical theatre in the UK, they are probably from the UK. They have had access to these things a lot more readily. Maybe when they were little, they went to see shows, things like that. To me, when I was growing up and like learning about musical theatre, I was almost piecing together like a puzzle that I didn't understand what it was. Like, I had small references, but I didn't know that it was a thing, right?
Yeah.
So to go from that to like the small incremental steps that led me to actually getting there, if I look back on that journey, it really makes me emotional. Like, I couldn't believe it. So when I got there and to realize that I had traveled from, my dad's sofa watching this thing on a laptop to being into it was mind blowing. And again, a show that I really love and think is one of the greatest pieces of musical theatre. I was very intimidated at first. You always get those thoughts of like, God, was I just the best they could do at the time? Can I actually do this? And obviously I knew the choreography from the recording, but it's not the same as learning it in person.
Yeah,
of course. So when it came to, and also especially Macavity, the fight, the sort of the solo into the fight is really strange timing, and the music is quite particular. So you get quite flustered because it's a moment where you are to begin with on your own. So it was quite intimidating. I personally didn't get it right away. It sort of took me a while to practice it and perfect it. And I always forget that whenever like swings maybe come and ask me like, oh, can we go over this? Or if I've had to do rehearsals with people that are learning it for the first time, I'm like, God, it is difficult to count. Like, it's really quite tricky. But the first few days of rehearsals, getting to meet everyone, we were so privileged to have Christy Cartwright lead pretty much the entirety of the rehearsal period. And it does start with just a sit down and a very generous offering of all of the backstory, which again, I was a massive fan, really had no idea. I remember on day one, sort of after the meet and greet, was talking to Dane casually and was like, well, at least there isn't much to worry about. There's not much of a plot to it. And he sort of looked at me in horror.
Wrong person to say that.
Yeah,
too,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. But, he sort of was like, oh, you're about to learn. You're about to see that, there absolutely is. So, I just, every single word that came out of Chris's mouth, I was just sort of in awe and would take it all in. And normally with musicals, you tend to start with the music because it's one of the things that you want to really get in your head as quickly as possible because it's very complex. So just sitting in a circle with a piano, with the musical director or the musical supervisor and learning the songs. And even just hearing, the bare bones of the melody from a piano, immediate goosebumps and sort of like, things like that can't really be conjured up in any other way. The sense of nostalgia that is also accomplishment is such a unique combination.
Yeah. I've been dying to hear Chrissy's like story.
You have to
in some way. And so I'm like, someone's just got to record it one day. But what do you remember of that? And I'm going to ask in the way of like you said, you didn't know there was much of a plot. What was kind of the most eye-opening piece for you to hear from that story?
Well, it's the Macavity side of things. Again, if you take it at face value in the show, you don't necessarily realize what his relationship to a lot of the other cats is. You don't get to see that backstory. Obviously, there's those small moments with Demeter, But again, if you don't have any further knowledge, they're so small that if you only see the show once, you would miss them.
Yeah, I probably won't even catch it for sure.
You wouldn't even know. So the relationship to Demeter, to Bon Ballerina, to Grisabella, what sort of is inferred that he does, what his MO is in terms of what's happening behind the scenes. Like, that was so shocking. It made a lot of sense, and it gave a lot of depth to that character. Well, not necessarily Macavity. Macavity, I don't think, has a lot of depth, but the girls definitely really puts into perspective. It definitely gave me a lot of complicated feelings about the song Macavity, which I'm sure everyone has.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Once you get to know what it's about. But it definitely sort of magnified Grisabella's story to a completely different degree. Because, she could just be an outcast. She could just be,
Yeah.
If that part of the story wasn't there, it wouldn't be as meaningful.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died.
So for someone who's maybe either listening to this, most people probably have a pretty good knowledge listening to this, but there's going to be some that don't.
Yeah.
How are you playing that? Like, what is that story? What was shared with you, and what have you kind of either added to or like really kind of embraced as you've done this for the past 2+ years?
Well, my idea of Macavity specifically, with the sort of base knowledge that we've established with his relationship with him, Tugger, and Monk probably being siblings, right?
Yep.
The three of them being old Deuteronomy's children. I think sort of the way I go about it is, once Macavity started getting consciousness of these powers that he has of sway over people and hypnotic powers, which are described in the song, obviously, it sort of got him drunk on it to a degree where he started disassociating with anything more interpersonal. All of his interpersonal relationships probably started feeling, more and more meaningless, because he can control what the other person does and says. And so this probably got him to a point where he became a complete sociopath, lost all sorts of empathy. And I actually think there's something kind of cool about a bad guy who's pure evil. There are no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Like, it's his 3 words. Like, there is just no redeeming qualities at all. And so the idea of this sort of like agent of chaos that appears out of nowhere wreaks absolute havoc. Obviously, not a big fan of his work in terms of like what he, does, especially with the way he kidnaps and sort of abuses the other female cats.
Yeah.
But
so what is that version? So like, I think everyone is the one that's like the most, I always use this as an example, because when I tell people how kind of wild Cats as a story is, but also how open-ended it is, I was like, one of the few things that there's absolutely no disagreement on is the Demeter relationship.
Yeah.
And that there was some type of abuse, and it was an abusive relationship, and that's where you see her skittish timidness like throughout the whole show comes from that. And that to me is also kind of wild, that's like one of the few things everyone's like, for sure, we're 100% in agreement on, is this. But what about the Grisabella Bon Ballerina piece?
So for me, the Bob is like, to me, is a really cool version of somebody who was able, because she's one of the strongest, she's probably the strongest personality amongst the female cats, at least. There is something for me of her, this strength that she has was something that was able to clock what Macavity was trying to accomplish early enough that she was able to separate from it, which is obviously why then she's so protective of Demeter. And I think it leads to her disdain for Grisabella as well. It's like, you didn't have you should have known better to an extent. And at the same time, I just think, again, Grisabella, someone who was so beautiful and had so much life and, essence of probably was just a really charming, lively person, cat, I guess. It's not, there's definitely a fascination with power and also, in a tribe that comes together so consistently to have an example of something that is so different. Macavity is probably the most polar opposite to anyone in that tribe. There is obviously an element of fashion, an element of charm and interest and intrigue. And then it just becomes like such a slippery slope that where do you draw the line of like, well, now you've gone too far, now you're irredeemable.
It is very interesting because I've always viewed Macavity as like you could play it one of two ways, at least from just purely plot perspective. Like you could either play it like you're saying, pure evil, like broke every human law, like no redeeming qualities. The worst evil character that come in and tries to capture and maybe murder. There's no like good intent of taking Old Deuteronomy. The other version is playing it as like, this is kind of the troubled older brother who's like still family. There's still an element to like, all right, we deal with him, but we're the ones that have to kind of be like, all right, we'll go get dad back because he's just causing some chaos again. And like, there's that level of like, you're not that bad, but it's still bad. So it's interesting to hear that you're playing the more evil version. I kind of like that better.
Well, I just think the level of reaction that you get every time there's a Macavity scare does not really warrant for like a timid version of the character or like there's nothing goofy. Like they are petrified. One of the notes that we get all the time is like during the scares, you have to fear for your life. You don't know where he is. He has all of these abilities and you don't know what he's going to do next. And we know that he's done really heinous things. We don't necessarily know that he's murdered anyone, but like, is the other stuff that he's done not, as bad, if not worse? I don't know. And I think to me is like the kidnapping of Old Deuteronomy is like something else, something new that he's trying to do because of the like Demeter Bomballerina incident where he's kind of like failed to use his evil hypnosis on Bomballerina.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying, so your version is because he's failed with these two, female cats. His next thing is like, I'm gonna try something different. Let me go capture him.
He's a bit bitter. Yeah, he's a bit bitter. He's like, I'm gonna pull like a big one this time.
I've kind of always felt, and maybe this is me just putting everything into the Jellicle choice story, that he's like, I'm not getting picked. I'm not letting anybody go. Like I'm gonna ruin tonight for that reason.
But I think because I've thought about this, I just think if that was because the Jellicle Ball happens every year. I just think the tribe would be slightly better prepared if he was, turning up so often. And they literally have no, even Monk, bless his heart, who tries his best, gets absolutely wasted. Well, actually, he does put up a fight to an extent, but I'm convinced that, the fight ends just because Macavity wanted to. He's like, I think leaving them with the knowledge that he could absolutely be back at any point terrorizes them and stresses them out way more than, actually fighting them, or like the not knowing is the worst part.
Yeah. I love that your justification is that the Jellicle security should be better because they have their party tonight. Like they need better bouncers for this.
Absolutely. I mean, Macavity's got 2 goons. Where are your goons?
Yeah.
And there's a few strapping, Alonso, Monk, Admetus.
Tumble Brutus.
That lot, they should sort of be able to do something. I mean, Alonso tries and also gets wasted. It's just not. It's really
have to boost some Jellicle security here. They need some bouncers at the door. There's a couple that are, there's some with some mystical psychic abilities. Come on,
there's magical cats. Like people have means. We have a whole train. Run him over. Something. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so I do love the more evil version because the line that it's still like, to me it's just the easiest joke, but it's something that's so crazy that it's in there, is that he's broken every human law.
Yeah.
Because what that insinuates is a lot, like that insinuates he's murdered somebody. That insinuates he's done everything under the sun which is fun to think about because there's so many obscure laws in America that are like, oh, did he
or anywhere
do this?
Is
or
he a
did
jaywalker? Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Jaywalking, tax evasion. Like he can be like, what else has he done?
There are so many things. Yeah.
But that does kind of lean more into the evilness. Of, he is truly evil.
I mean, obviously that's very funny. I do sometimes, because obviously it's broken every human law, and then it's the law of gravity. I've always sort of thought of it as like the laws of nature, because he has magical powers. So
okay.
That's more like, he can disappear, he can fly, he can levitate, he can do all of these things.
That's way more practical and probably accurate than what the poetry was going for.
To an extent,
the idea.
More practical. Obviously, he can't really, but also like sort of because I mean, we do have proof that he has to an extent some powers, because he does take control. He hypnotizes the tribe, and then he also appears in different parts of the stage too close together to be moving, to be like getting there by walking. But to me, I've always thought like maybe there's an element also of like when the legend of what you can do takes on a life of its own. So actually your abilities are really blown out of proportion, like more so than what you're actually able to do. And it's just your reputation and the terror that you bring is enough.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's a little mob mentality at some point, where it's like there's enough stories to scare people straight versus not even having to do anything. Yeah.
I will say also my only gripe with that part of the show, I think, like, and again, I'm a massive fan. I love doing it so much. I just adore it. But I will say the times I've been able to watch it, to me, there's a little bit of it's hard to reconcile the way he's spoken about in the song and the tone of the song Macavity with the way that the choreography happens in the fight, because there's something of the song that sort of like almost lets you think that he's always in control and he knows exactly what he's doing. But a lot of the physical language of how he's presented is so manic and so high energy and so intense and so sort of like non-stop, that to me there's like a little bit of disconnect between, like, I don't know, I feel like he would be a little bit more suave in his doing, but at the same time he's a psychopath, so it kind of makes sense that is
some of that because of who's singing the song. Like, it's coming from the two people that have had some of the most traumatic but also experiential pieces with Macavity, that's like,
for sure,
hey, here's our version of it.
Yeah, it's through a lens that's obviously
him.
not. Yeah, the lens that they are singing the song through is not the reality of what the cat actually is, for sure.
What again, you've been doing this for almost 2 years now with a lot of the same people, because I know a lot of you transition.
Yeah, about half.
About half. How much do you all discuss this? Like, how much do you talk through? Like, but after the rehearsals and like you did like the main things, do you talk about some of the plot and pieces, or is it just like go on stage, do your job, go home and hang out at the pub? I can't tell you.
I mean, because the cast that came together in China, there were a few people that had done it before, but there were quite most of us, I would say, hadn't. And we just sort of lucked out between people who were really excited about doing the show, people like me who's maybe it was their dream show, and the time that we had with Chrissy, who really weaves into the rehearsal process a lot of the story and the meaning and the layers. So it kind of like naturally started a lot of like theory crafting and discussion of the law constantly. Like, I with a lot of people, but I remember like mainly I would hang out a lot with our monk and our Mungo Jerry, and it was just like who's related to who and who does what, and like how do you play it, especially because like both those characters have a lot of different ways to be played. Is Monk related to Grisabella? What's his relationship? Mungo Jerry, again, I think is so amazing that you have the option to play at least 3 different versions, if not more, of the relationship with Rumpelteazer. I mean, that's so brilliant. Because I remember like when I watched it growing up, I was like, well, yeah, they're together. They're a couple. That was always the version that I was like, oh no, there's so many different versions.
Yeah, they could be brother, sister.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's funny. There's a moment in The Bull where the the boys sort of go, after the bomb step, the boys go and pick up the girls, and it's all sort of like couples. It's Alonso and Cassandra, Mungo and Rump, Tugger and Bomballerina. Sort of like the instruction is to give it sort of a sexual tension, but then it's the twins are also coupled up, and you are reminded that like cats are not as strict in terms of incest.
Yeah, they're cats.
Yeah, they're cats. I don't know if that's okay to say, but
I mean, they're all together, right?
They are all
it's
together.
One family,
and realistically, like obviously, the twins are like have this specific characteristic about them, but technically, a lot of these cats would be like from the same litter. So technically, a lot of us are twins.
I mean, it's the family tree is funny to think about when you put it from a human lens, because it's like, oh, who's mom and dad, and it's like you're right. There's a litter. They're all probably from a couple.
There's about 3 generations of cats in the show. So if you don't count Old Deuteronomy, so everyone else is pretty much, So if you can play Mungo and Rump as siblings, as well as lovers, as well as best friends, so you don't have to pick.
I love. So to me, that's one of my favorite parts of the show is that you can do that and you have that kind of variation. And I've always fascinated by how much of that is like, I work a different type of job, and it's like there's people that when I talk to outside of work, it's like we're not going to talk about work at all. Like it's like we're gonna for you all get off stage and then go talk about life or whatever. Yeah. And there's sometimes where it's like it's so infused with what you do that you do talk about it a little bit, and especially early on.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I would say not as much anymore, but definitely. I mean, it's been a really long time now. And also, with some of the people that have come in later, they might have not had a chance to, because of time and logistics and everything, you don't get as much of that. So you try and like bring some of it up maybe in like, but also, it's also absolutely fine to just do this as a job and not have to fall into the well of the world of cats.
You don't have to be jealous
to some crazy extent. I mean, the thing is, for me especially, like, it's Macavity is the cat that's more famous, but really you spend most of your show as Admetus or Plato in America. And I went into like ridiculous depth with my interpersonal relationships as Admetus, which actually we are very, very lucky. We all have been given a chance to watch the show during the time that we've been in it.
Oh, nice.
Which is amazing. It's really rare. And, Dane is amazing at making sure that everyone gets a chance to see it, which is really special. I've not often seen shows that I've been in. And one of my main takeaways from watching it was like, again, because I love it and I'm in it and I want to live it to the fullest, I try to give it my all on stage every day. But the Admetus track, to an extent, is designed to be sort of like slightly less visible because it serves the purpose of like not being like, hold on a minute, that's the same person who's doing those two things. So, I'm like killing myself, and then I'm like, oh, Admetus is not really like, doesn't get a lot of spotlight other than, which makes a lot of sense, obviously, because you get your spotlight as Macavity. But I just thought it was funny. Like I'm, working out my relationship. Like I play as like Jelly as my mom, and I have all sorts of like little moments with people, and really have like, the way I look up to Monk and all sorts of things. And then I'm like, obviously it's amazing and it's fun for me to play, but I'm like, none of this obviously is available for the audience to see or understand.
It is so true, because as I've seen the show more now, and I've, become way more familiar with it, there is all of the ensemble cats in the beginning, especially, where I'm like, there's Bus for Jones and Gus is out there somewhere, like as whatever name they've picked for that character.
Absolutely.
In some productions, they've actually made Grisabella go out there.
Oz.
And so it's like, where's the baby Grizz dancing in the back? And they are all so hard to find because you're all purposely put in places where it is less visible.
It's genius. I mean, the staging is genius. I'm sure that some people have had Grisabella do Naming of Cats to their face and did not clock that was the same cat that sings Memory at the end. I'm sure of it. It's astonishing. Well, at the again, Macavity doesn't get a bow, which I'm always a bit like, it's a shame because
true.
So I always try to do a little reference to Macavity in my bow and like do one of his moves or something that would suggest that this is the actor who portrayed Macavity, but I'm not sure how often it reads, and people must be like, why is that cat doing that? But I don't know. I just feel bad that
To be fair, the first time you're seeing it, you're not remembering most of those names.
No.
You have no, they're like, oh yeah, that one. That one.
Of course,
They're
absolutely.
you all blur together. If
Not
the
at
first
all.
time.
Not at
first
all,
time I was just mesmerized. I was like, I could have told you Grisabella, and then that was about it from like which cat was which.
Me too. Like a lot of the cats I didn't really know before going into it, like the smaller, the Carbuckety and the, you don't really understand. But I just think it's so genius to like, even the smaller parts or like people, cats that don't get a song. Like the idea of a Cassandra is so genius. Someone that is technically in the background, but has such a distinct look, such a distinct personality, can make such amazing choices in that. I just love it. I think it's so, even if you're just ensemble, quote unquote, you have such an awesome part to play. There are no other shows where this is true.
Yeah.
There's
totally. It's the most everyone's story is deep. Like there's a lot to every single cat story, even if there's not a song about them, but there's still relationships, and there's still like that's probably the depth that this show goes into that I've not seen in other ones where, the ensemble's playing 5 different people because they're switching up to fit their part of the story, whereas this is like, no, you are that cat for mostly the whole time.
For the entire time. There's only a few people that play multiple cats, Other people, you really have to commit to that character. Yeah. And you're on stage the whole time. It's just like there's no other thing. And again, even the sort of like, once you get past the initial, which is something that is acknowledged of like, guys, it's going to feel a bit silly to begin with. But once, if you can really dip your mind into like allowing yourself to, we all did it growing up as kids, like really live a fantasy, the things that it can unlock. I honestly, the first few months of doing the show, as soon as the music would start for the ball, it was like we were casting a spell or something, as a unit of people doing this synchronized movement, like all of it's just unbelievable. And like by the end of the Jellicle Ball, I almost felt like I was on drugs. You give yourself so wholeheartedly to this weird, strange thing.
It is the beauty of musical theater, because there's like elements of where you get to play a biopic and be somebody, like, and you're trying to do the best version of them. And then there's others like this, or a lot of Andrew Lloyd Webber, like even his, like you've got Evita where you're playing someone that's real. And you've got Starlight Express where you're playing a train or a cat or whatever. Absolutely. It's like it's kind of you get to really perform and act.
And you just have to cherish those, because you can, most of the time you're going to be playing human beings,
Yeah.
The chance to really commit to moving like a cat and doing all of the things that involves is incredible. It's been truly like the highest achievement of my career. Like I just have to recognize
it is funny to be like, your paid profession is to go out there and act like a cat for 2.5 hours.
Absolutely.
8 times a week.
And it's so hard. It's so unnecessary.
Oh my God. Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died.
Let's do some rapid fire. So Please. If you could go on for one night for any cat, who would you want to play?
Regardless of whether I could actually do
whether exactly. Male, female, doesn't matter.
And Victoria, for sure.
Victoria.
Yes.
I love it. Put that ballet
again, and someone else who like has such iconic moments in the show that are so instrumental to the story, and doesn't. I don't know if she always gets her shine. The White Cat touch is like, that responsibility of like being the one to make that plot point happen. It's beautiful.
Who is your favorite and least favorite cat from a personality standpoint? So who would you want to hang out with, and who would bug you? Ignoring the performers, just the character wise.
Sure. Favorite personality wise, I'm going to shine a light on someone who doesn't often, and I'm going to back myself, and I'm going to say Admetus, because, he is fairly secondary, and he does serve a purpose in terms of like just being Macavity later. But his words are, easygoing, protective, loyal, which are very good. And he has that beautiful moment with Victoria, which is very tender and sort of like genuine and heartfelt with what that implies. He's a sweetie. He's just a little sweetie,
Okay.
So
what about least favorite?
If we're saying like I would never want to hang out with them, I'm gonna stick to what I'm doing to do Macavity.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
why would you ever?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, if you're playing him that evil, you wouldn't want to.
Nope.
Yeah. Favorite song in the show?
Well, as I mentioned, growing up, it was Rum Tum Tugger.
Yep.
But after being in the show, because I'm not in it and I get to really listen to it, and often I'm ready by the time the song starts, Skimble Shags. Because I get to really listen to it, watch it every night. And also sometimes I go and peek at what the band is doing, which is mind-blowing. I mean, the musical element is thrilling. And that song is just
so fun.
Amazing,
Just fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that stays in your head for sure.
Completely.
The concept of a cat, leading a train is genius.
It's
so fun.
Again, so fun.
It's adorable.
You said that, being from Italy and not having a ton of shows translated. So if you could translate, which show, musical theater, non-cats would you want translated in Italian that you wish you could just go see at home with your parents?
I think one of the things that the translation sometimes doesn't do very well is if something is set, if we're talking West Side Story, which is so connected to being in New York City, it's really difficult when you translate it to convey a lot of because it's so tied to the language, the accent, a lot of it is a part of it. So I think things like Wicked are really good to translate because there's not as much, obviously there's a reference to Kansas, but it doesn't really matter because that part can stay sort of true to that. But when you're talking something more fantastical, I mean, Cats would be great, obviously, but it's just very difficult to translate.
Okay. Most important question. So this show's centers around my argument that I don't think Grisabel's the right Jellicle choice. So, Marco, who is your Jellicle choice and why?
Well, I have two answers because if we're talking, I think of it in terms of who deserves it and who deserves it if we're talking, the idea of the sort of contest of the presentations, right? The nominations, the people, the cats being I deserve to, because, everyone talks about who deserves it. But in theory, everyone who presents themselves that night is technically eligible to be picked.
Yeah, to be picked, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really about your life story, your age. Those things shouldn't really matter. It should just be about, in a way, who performs the best. If that's the case to me, who performs the best and deserves to go is Misto. I don't think anyone else on that stage during that night gives more of a performance than Misto. And he retires All You Saw in Me. Give it to him.
That's that's the American Idol answer.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think, But if we're talking sort of in terms of the story, I think the story is perfect. I think the show is perfect. So for me, it is Grisabella.
So which one? I'm only letting you pick one. Which answer are you?
Grisabella. I think I couldn't change the show. Especially after learning the story and being in it and seeing Grisabella's journey every night. And I understand what your gripe is with the fact that she should get to enjoy being reunited with her family. But the truth of the Jellicle cat and the Jellicle tribe is that they always have been and they always will be. So it's not really a parting of ways, it's a returning in a different form. And, the essence of that lives. Yeah.
So much of this my argument centers around the concept of what you think the Heaviside Layer is. And I view it as death and being there's that version of that cat is gone.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a new version of Grisabella or whatever, which also could be I'm not sure that that's even that, because a lot of people of Victoria have said that they thought they were last year's choice and that they're now new. And so I'm that means that you weren't Victoria before. So I view that as the end, which is why I want her to stay. But I love the fact that you're choosing it from a competition standpoint, because the original joke of this podcast started because of that. Yeah. Because I saw Leona Lewis and I immediately thought about the X Factor.
Of course.
And I was this is the X Factor, but with cats.
Absolutely.
And that answer is also very different because you picked Mistopheles. I picked Mistopheles and Tugger together as a boy band.
Sure.
Because that's X Factor does that a ton. That's how One Direction and Fifth Harmony, all those bands were created.
Definitely.
So I was those two clearly have something going on.
Absolutely.
They each sing about each other. And
the thing is, if you're building this mythology of old Deuteronomy as this wise, all-knowing cat that picks, at the end, he's not going to pick, who did
Simon Cowell
dance. Well, yes, but I mean that's not the vibe that you're getting from Deuteronomy.
He's picking whoever's going to make him the most money in the next phase here.
Yeah,
and
I mean, I guess I guess that sort of like cheapens it a little bit, but it does make
totally, and that's where it's like it is purely
it's like a funny.
I've been asked this, and I don't know the answer because it's hard to answer because it's such a strange hypothetical. But if I would have walked out of the show with any other Grisabella that wasn't Leona Lewis, would I have thought that way? Like, would my mind have gone X Factor?
Sure.
Or would have I watched it from a totally different lens? And if I did, then that joke might not have been made. And this show does it's like a sliding doors moment of where this doesn't exist without that moment.
It's so crazy, the thoughts that you have. In a way, I'm like, celebrity casting is always a bit of a double-edged sword because my first time seeing the show was Nicole Scherzinger, which was amazing. Yeah. And the whole time I was like, that's Nicole Scherzinger. It's hard to lose yourself in it as much. Luckily, I had, a previous background with it, and she was incredible. But it does sort of, it's not really how it's meant to be received, I guess. Well, I don't know. It gets people in the theater, so pros and cons.
It does, and I think with Grisabella, you can get away with it because of the stunt casting. Because of if you don't put her in the beginning, you can have her just be much more come in, belt, and leave.
You can even put her in the beginning. People are not going to know. No one's going to recognize.
Yeah, but I think it'd be harder for if it's Nicole Scherzinger and you try to stick her in the back, it's going to look weird.
For sure.
So that's kind of where.
It's funny, actually. I believe Lucy insisted on being in the opening and in Naming of Cats.
Yeah,
because I think she was going to be allowed to not do that. She was like, no, I have to. Well, she's also a fan, so.
Yeah, I mean it's a big part of it too. I think it's a cool part of the story to me. If you have that ability to be in that, especially such an iconic opening number.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible, and it's also one of the only numbers where truly everybody is present.
Yeah.
So that also is really special. Can I ask you a question? I mean, you might not want to include it, but if you had to remove a number from the show.
Oh, okay. So there's a lot of hot takes. And I think the easy answer is this has already been answered by Andrew Lloyd Webber's people because on the cruise ship, they cut Bustopher Jones.
Well, yes.
So I know that decision has been made.
But I'm asking you.
Asking me, I think that there's been times where I love a lot of it. And there's a lot of it that is really important parts. There's probably 2 or 3 answers that if I had to be there's been times where I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ready for this, or I don't have it. So Peaks and Pollicles is so strange to me.
That's so funny. It's one of my all-time favorites.
And I know people love it.
Love that number.
I don't remember it being in the first version, and it's I've seen it put in Act 1, I've seen it put in Gus's song, and so that's kind of one where I'm like, I don't understand its value. It's much clearer to me as Gus's story, but it's such a strange song, but it is fun to watch. So it's that's one where I'm like, I could get away with not seeing it. And then my hot take is, I think Moments of Happiness is beautiful. I think at times I wish it would put it in a different spot. I don't like it at the top of Act 2.
Interesting.
So that's the one
where would you put it?
So my structurally from Cats, I think I'm not sure where I'd put it, but I know that I don't love Little Memory at the end of Act 1. These are all really hot takes, by the way. People are going to come after me.
I'm aware. I do. I kind of am with you on the fact that the Jellicle ball
end
would be
on the ball.
Really,
when you all finish pointing out the crowd should be curtain.
The problem is there is no curtain. That is the main issue.
So cut the lights and then you all crawl off stage.
Maybe. Yeah.
But that to me is such a moment. And then it's it feels like the end. And then there is this other moment, and it's so critical to the storytelling that I get why you have it.
Yeah.
But I'm also half the people have no idea what the story is still at this point.
So true.
So I'm that's one thing I would really want to do differently. And then Moments of Happiness, I'm not sure where you'd put it, but I feel like it's such, again, a dance heavy show that I would love you to come back in kind of like you do in the beginning of the show where it's opening number with heavy dance. And so I would like to see that in some way. I don't know how you restructure that and then have the Moments of Happiness right before Gus in its way. But I'm missing something in between. And maybe it's just because American audiences are awful right now. and it's like you're coming back from intermission and everyone's still got their phone out and everything. And it's like, it's such a powerful, slow, like deep song that I'm like, I need some energy to bring us back in.
For sure.
And then give me that.
It's a rough going the first 25, 30 minutes of Act 2. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm not sure I'd cut it, but I don't like where it is right now.
Yeah, I hear you for sure. And the issue is that, again, if you actually listen to it and listen to the words, it's saying some like really beautiful, meaningful, profound
incredible
stuff. But no one's it. Like, it's really hard to be in it at that point.
Yeah, at that point you're opening candy and like you're kind of like regrouping.
You're kind of trying to get back into the world, and you're like, hold on a minute, what's he talking about? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I hear you. I think you make very good points. I am like, when I found out that I wasn't going to be in Pixar Pollicles, I was devastated, especially because once you get good at doing the makeup change and the costume change into Macavity, you are done by the time Skimbleshank starts. So you absolutely could be in it. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is my one, because again, I've never been in it, and I know that people who do it have told me like it's a bit of a slog, but it looks so fun. I think I would just have a blast doing it.
It's just very silly, and
it's so strange. It's so strange.
Yeah. So that's my answers to those. I'm sure people are going to disagree with me. I think that's the beauty of Cats, though, is that I still get messages from people where they're like, this isn't true that you said. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Yeah. I'm sure that it's played that way at some point.
There is absolutely no right answer.
That's what I love about the show.
Well, yeah, it's the thing that I think makes it so successful, you know.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong.
Amazing.
At all.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so fun. How can people stay in touch with you on social media? And we'll post your last couple stops here, too. Yes.
I'm just on Instagram as marco.r.venturini. That's my main sort of Cats out place where I post things. That's amazing. And then we have 2 months left of tour, and then that's it.
Yeah, so a couple more. By the time this comes out, there'll be a couple more stops to go to.
The idea that I'm inevitably careening towards my last Jellicle Ball makes me unreasonably emotional.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of Cats is that you can do it through a lot of your career.
That's true.
So you can always come back to it. You can be Gus at some point.
Probably not as Macavity. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. Yes. But there's still time. So hopefully you'll have a couple more months, and then you still have a Jellicle life. But once you're Jellicle,
you will always have a Jellicle life.
Always a Jellicle.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been so fun. So thank you for coming on, especially mid-tour and mid doing this.
Thank you so much. It was really fun to do a deep dive.
Amazing. Well, thank you, and thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown the catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of those podcasts. Follow us on social media at The Wrong Cat Died, or check our website, thewrongcatdied.com.